and welcome to Another Day, Another Evil. I'm your host Melissa.
And I'm Gina, and May is my month to teach you something that I bet you didn't know, and something that's maybe a little more light-hearted than what we usually discuss. How many times since the age of 18, or even before, have you gone out drinking? How many of those nights have you maybe had a little bit too much and been a little bit drunk? How many times have you had way too much and been completely shit-faced?
Lots.
And of all of the times that you've been drunk at any point on the scale, how many times have you been arrested for it?
None.
Not just for causing trouble, but just for being drunk. Well, technically, you could have been. So there's a law still in place in England and Wales today which makes it illegal to be drunk in a pub.
Bonkers.
The place that you get drunk.
Go out and get drunk.
So, obviously a lot of people may have been arrested or cautioned or spoken to the police for being drunk and disorderly or violent conduct or even urinating in public. But this law isn't in reference to that. It's literally just for being drunk. Section 12 of the Licensing Act 1872 states that, quote, every person found drunk on any licensed premises shall be liable to a penalty. And that's a penalty of up to a £200 fine. So the UK is known for having a massive drinking culture. So obviously the law is not being enforced. And if it was, I think everybody that we know would have a criminal record. So let's look into the history of alcohol in the UK. So archaeological finds have proved that people have been drinking beer for around 13,000 years. During the Middle Ages, wine was more commonly drunk, but after the dissolution of the monasteries and the disappearance of English vineyards, this dropped off. For more than 1,000 years in the UK, beer was an important drink, particularly for poorer people, as it provided much needed calories and was often safer to drink than water. Can you imagine using that as an excuse? I've definitely used it as being cheaper as an excuse abroad, but definitely not being safer than water. Yeah. Although earlier in rural areas, people would have lived near relatively clean and safe water sources. Think small streams as opposed to the dirty River Thames during the Industrial Revolution. In 1690, following the deregulation of distillation, the consumption of gin soared. Gin is made by distilling grains along with juniper berries and other botanicals. Unlike whiskey, which needs to be aged for years, gin can be made and sold relatively quickly, which is also why I was informed on a whiskey tour that there is a boom in the gin market currently. All of the distilleries will be opening with the aim to sell whiskey, but with it needing to be aged for a number of years, they sell gin instead. Anyway, distillation was deregulated and gin consumption soared. This triggered widespread concern and gin was essentially prohibited in 1736. Of course, this didn't stop gin being made, drunk or sold, but it did, as happened during the 1920s Prohibition era in the US, drive it underground and onto the black market. In 1743, new legislation created restrictive yet legal rules surrounding gin production, but alongside poor harvest grain, gin consumption trailed off. During the Industrial Revolution, with the relocation of many from small rural communities to large towns with less sanitary conditions, workers spent long days in factories and then spent time afterwards in the local pub drinking to escape the overcrowding at home. This shift in culture also saw a shift from drinking beer to drinking gin, which was widely available and low on tax. Given it is made through the process of distillation rather than fermentation, it is a lot stronger, although it was still often drunk by the pint.
Oh, Jesus.
As you can imagine, drinking a pint of gin, or more, would of course lead to all sorts of drunken behaviour, and probably blindness.
Yeah.
So this was where the moral panic and attempt to curb drinking came in. It is also important to note that classism was massively at play here. The people drinking gin were poor, and it was essentially their behaviours were then stigmatised and cautioned, unlike the upper classes who were drinking wine and champagne. So this gin craze led to many anti-drink movements aimed at encouraging people to limit their alcohol consumption. Drunkenness was also explicitly linked to poverty, crime and disorderly conduct. Given the increased population within cities, it's not really surprising. In 1830, the Beer House Act was passed, allowing any ratepayer to brew and sell beer on licence in an attempt to encourage people to drink beer instead of strong spirits. This led to the opening of thousands of more public houses and breweries, and of course was therefore criticised for promoting rather than preventing drunkenness. In 1847, the Band of Hope temperance movement was established in Leeds. Reverend Jabez Tunnicliffe had visited a man dying from alcohol consumption who told the Reverend to, quote, warn against the first glass of alcohol, of course. In response to Reverend and Mrs. Carlyle, an Irish mother of 7 who was concerned with the amount of alcohol being consumed by children, set up the temperance movement. This was aimed at teaching children under 16 about Christianity and the problems associated with drinking in order to encourage them to lead a healthy life. 300 children attended the first meeting in November of that year and signed the pledge that, quote, I, the undersigned, do agree that I will not use intoxicating liquors as a beverage. I wonder how many of those actually did drink.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know that.
The group grew across the country, doing many activities such as pageants and writing hymn books. And by the end of the 19th century, it had 3.5 million members.
Wow.
In 1897, Queen Victoria even became a patron. However, I don't think she probably stopped drinking.
No, probably not. I feel like yeah.
She was probably too...
Enjoying the champagne life.
Yeah, don't we all? In 1872, the Licensing Act was passed, decreeing that being drunk, even inside a pub, was illegal. People arguing for temperance did not think that the Act had gone far enough and wanted to limit or ban pubs entirely, such as they did during the Prohibition eras in the 1920s in US. Another stipulation of the Act, which, fun fact, is why we have a lot of Irish pubs with the names O'Brien's or O'Neill's, is that it required pub owners to display their names on their businesses.
Oh, wow. Never knew that.
Yeah. Despite the groups wanting restrictions of alcohol, overall this act was not popular. No surprises really, and in all honesty, we would have probably just seen an influx of illegal underground taverns and black market sales.
Yeah, if you ban something, it doesn't make it any better. It just puts it in a unregulated world, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you're brewing moonshine as opposed to beer.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't help in any sense, way, shape or form, does it?
No.
In 1877, the Select Committee on Intemperance was set up to review the effects of the restrictive measures imposed by licensing acts. In one heated debate, the Bishop of Peterborough argued that the idea of prohibition was essentially an attack on masculinity itself and therefore stopping it was absurd. Again, no surprises there, is there?
No, I think, this idea that drinking is masculine, it's part of your masculinity, and you kind of, doesn't feel like anything's changed, does it?
No, I mean, I work in a restaurant and a pub, and you hear so many people going, oh, I can down 10 pints in 10 minutes or less than, and it's like, oh yes, I'm such a big man.
Yeah, and if you're a woman, you don't drink pints, you drink halves, or you drink wines or spirits.
Yeah.
But not whiskey, because that's a man's drink.
That is a man's drink, yeah.
Yeah. And cocktails are women's drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How
It
it's
is.
still linked to gender.
Yes. From the 1880s, Scottish alcohol producers and retailers formed local and national trade defence organisations aimed at promoting and protecting local businesses and trade. They published weekly or monthly journals, of many which articles criticised the temperance movement with a scathing tone. They also had to promote and defend drinking alcohol. One article describes drinking as being, quote, a happiness-inducing business.
Not wrong there.
It's not, because actually I've recently gone sober and I listened to this sober podcast, which it's basically just these two blokes that have gone sober and like are just chatting, and they get loads of other people on that have gone sober and talk about their experiences. But your first drink of alcohol, it says, basically has the same effects as like Xanax.
Right.
So it's like the boosting of serotonin in your brain and like
Yeah.
the happiness. So that is why many people after after your first one or two drinks, you get really happy.
Yeah.
And then after your third drink, that is the feeling that you're chasing. But
Yeah.
obviously you don't get that. But it is a happiness-inducing business. So
Yeah.
like it's not wrong.
Not wrong, no.
And another, how, quote, lifts the spirits, which it's not wrong. It is,
Yeah.
that first drink
The buzz
does
that you
do
get,
that.
Yeah.
It does, like brain chemistry wise, does do that.
Yeah.
So such movements against teetotalism also argued how alcohol benefits both the local and national economies, and that if most people were able to drink in moderation, why punish the alcohol trade?
Which seems fair. It's going to happen, so why not let
Yeah.
it... Keep it being taxed, keep it
Above
regulated,
board.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And keep people in businesses and in jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think now if you got rid of the kind of alcohol or like that, the absolute crash in the economy that would
Yeah.
happen would be crazy. Like thousands and millions of people would be out of jobs
Yeah.
worldwide.
And hospitality is already, like the pub is dying in
Yeah.
the UK.
Yeah, it's already a dying
Yeah.
business. But yeah. And these movements also called out against the pubs and clubs seen as selling disreputable alcohol and going against the laws in place. So throughout the early 1900s and both world wars, drinking actually tailed off, potentially due to the economic factors such as lowered income and higher taxes, or of course directly linked to the death tolls. Post-war, as incomes began to increase, drinking more than doubled. New drinks such as lagers began to emerge during the 1960s, and the social attitudes towards women was also reflected in the attitudes towards women drinking.
Yeah, of course, when we were moving like out of the home sphere and into the workplace, and therefore into the more kind of having your own money, being able to go out and have a drink with your friends, and rather than just going to each other's house for tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
In 2003, the Licensing Act was passed, which is still in force today. This brought in rules that venues and management staff must be licensed to sell alcohol for both in-house consumption, such as bars or restaurants, or off-house consumption, such as off-licenses or supermarkets. The aim of that was to reduce disorderly conduct and crime and increase public and children's safety. So, where are we today? Well, if you haven't already heard this, Gen Z are drinking less than the previous generations. They're also less intelligent, though I'm sure that's not really a causal link.
Maybe not.
More and more people are participating in Dry January. Is it due to rising costs and falling wages? Or are people more health conscious now? Maybe it's a result of social media. I know that when we went out drinking, it wasn't really documented. You could make an absolute tit of yourself, and nobody would find out.
Or you'd have the dodgy, blurry camera pictures that you couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that you uploaded 600 onto a Facebook album.
And the only one clear picture was the ones that the clubs used to do the rounds of and take and put on.
Yeah, which you were posing for, so
Yeah.
it definitely wasn't as bad as...
No, just a few glazed eyes and not anything.
Not anything like now. If you make a tit of yourself now, it could go
Not anything
viral.
career-ending.
It could go viral.
Yeah.
Absolutely viral. So yeah, definitely, we could make a tit of ourselves and nobody would find out, which definitely isn't the case now.
No.
Maybe it's a combination of all of it. What we do know is that technically, if you do still go out and get drunk, it is illegal. So that was just my quick May Extra to lighten the mood a little bit and teach you all that drinking is bad.
Drink in moderation. No, not...
Drink safely.
Yeah.
What is it? What do they put over all the adverts?
Drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly, guys.
That's it.
Don't.
Gamble responsibly.
Can you tell that Melissa might have some problems? No, I think it's drink responsibly. I think it's probably both.
It's probably, yeah.
But no, it's definitely illegal to be drunk in public, but you are not going to get arrested unless you do something major.
Yeah, unless you do something else that's actually illegal.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Stay safe.
Goodbye.
All episodes are written and presented by Melissa and Georgina Scora.
Editing is by Vicky Hunter.
All of our sources can be found in our show notes or on our website.
Take care.
Stay safe out there.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.